Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Whether you are going to bed in Saudi Arabia or you are waking up in Timbuktu, this is Funny Like Clown Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. May 11th, 2021. This is episode 108. Here to discuss legendary late night talk show host Garry Shandling and what he went on to do in a legendary career on the cable TV networks. You see, you don't always have to be on the big name networks. You can make it happen on cable. As always, today's episode is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time. There's only one G Vegas available at www.gvegas.webs.com. And I don't know if Garry Shandling liked buffalo sauce or not, but if he did, I'm sure he would enjoy some G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. If not, he enjoyed comedy and. What a legendary career. Started out with it's the Garry Shandling show, and later on went on to do the Larry Sanders show. As always, you got to get your start in this business. How do you get started? Began writing for sitcoms, better known ones Sanford and Son and Welcome Back Carter, some of the great sitcoms of our time. And writers don't get enough credit. You ever been in a movie and like when they start running the credits, that's when they get up and leaves the movie, and it's like. They don't get the credit for how hard they work to make that movie a success. Only the people on screen get the big credits, and it's like the people on screen couldn't do half of what they did if it wasn't for the people working behind the scenes. And I've done enough in the entertainment business. I know that. I did a TV show, and you were only as good as your crew. I found that on TV, and I'm doing movies now, and you're only as good as the director lets you be. And the podcast here, I can do this by myself, so I'm only as good as I want to be on the podcast right here. So. But, hey, when you're on stuff like that, you're only as good. And all those jokes that they performed and all the funny, scenarios they were in, those were all by the writers. And Garry Shandling, he was one of the writers. So that's the guy who wrote the stuff that made the actors look good, okay, when they acted out what he wrote down on paper. So give him the due. Let's see. Had a successful appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, which... if you were good enough to get on there and Johnny gave you a little wave over the couch or he gave you the, hey, okay, you like it, that's it. Boom, you're a made comic. You get paid gigs the rest of your life. It's not like today. You go on there today, you're not getting paid gigs for the rest of your life. I remember a comic, he was out of New York, he said he finally worked his way up, he was on The Tonight Show, he thought big things were going to the next day, nothing happened. Okay, nobody freaking called him to do jack squat, so... it's not like the olden days where once you got seen on TV, that's it. You're in every comedy club across America because you're a known commodity seen on television. Times are changing, man. Nowadays it's podcasts. Who's got the most hits on your podcast? That's what people are listening to, and that's why there's so many of them because that's what the people want. They say what the Joe Rogan Podcast. He has more listeners than the Tonight Show has available to him. So Every person who has a television set, they're not watching The Tonight Show. But if every single person that had a television set was watching The Tonight Show, that's still not as many watchers as Joe Rogan has on his podcast. Power of the internet right there, baby. You're worldwide. You have no, everybody's following it over now. Everybody's on the internet because that's the place to be. Let's see. But, hey, back then, Garry Shandling, The Tonight Show, boom, he's a made comic. He became a frequent guest host whenever Johnny Carson had something else to do or was sick or something. He'd come in to guest host the show. He was actually considered a replacement for Carson after he retired. He was among those considered Joan Rivers, David Letterman, and David Brenner. As we know, Jay Leno ended up getting the gig. But he was one of the guys being considered. And, just to be considered for a gig like that, that's just amazing. 1986 to 1990 it ran. He created his own show for Showtime. Nominated for 4 Emmy Awards, the Garry Shandling Show. His second show, the Larry Sanders Show, was for HBO in 1992, and that was where he experienced his most success, which, your first time around, that's when you get used to what's going on, you figure out what's happening. By the second time around, you're a pro, you know what's going on, you're a specialty at what you do, and even in sports, your first gig as a coach usually goes okay, but your second time around, you learn from all the mistakes you made. You're not making the mistakes again. You're ready to rock and roll. So he was ready to rock and roll with that second show. How ready to rock and roll was he? He was nominated to 18 Emmy Awards, okay? So goes to show you. where the first one, the Garry Shandling Show, was nominated for 4 Emmy Awards. His second show, the Larry Sanders Show, 18 Emmy Awards it was nominated for. Had a reoccurring role in the Marvel movies, which I didn't even get, because I'm into superheroes, man. Got a movie coming out myself, The World Needs a New Superhero. Look that one up. It's going to be on Amazon Prime someday. With COVID, who knows when, but someday. But yeah, Larry Sanders, man. I guess he had some cameo roles in Iron Man 2, Captain America, The Winter Soldier. He was the voice of the turtle in Over the Hedge, so keeping his foot in the stuff. I mean, you're in the Marvel movies. I would love for my character, the child support superhero, to be in one of the Marvel movies, just as an extra. Just you see him for a few seconds at a party, boom, that's it. I don't have to talk. It's just I'm there. I'm recognized. I'm happening. Someday may happen. Who knows? If not, hey, got my own movie, right? Amazon Prime. Nothing wrong with that. Let's see. I also did. He was a voice. I always said voiceover work. You can't beat that. Voiceover work in The Jungle Book. And he hosted the Grammy 4 times, and he hosted the Emmy 3 times. And you got to be at the top of your game to be asked to host one of those events right there, because that's when the best of the best get together. And who hosts the best of the best? The best of the best of the best. How many best do we got there? I don't know. You count them. Let's see. How did it all get started? He was at the University of Arizona. I guess in his postgraduate studies, he pursued a degree in creative writing. And while he was doing some creative writing, I guess he was trying to write some jokes. So he drove 2 hours across Arizona to a club in Phoenix to a show where George Carlin was performing. And I guess he got into the show. We went to talk to George and gave him a couple pages of the jokes and asked him to read them. Drove 2 hours back home the next day. Drove 2 hours back to Phoenix, Arizona on a round trip. Talked to George, and Carlin said, hey, you got some funny stuff on each page. Keep at it. So you get some approval from one of the godfathers of comedy. That means you got it going on right there, okay? And you know, you might say George might have said that about anyone, and you know, it's good to offer encouragement, but most comics are brutally honest, man. It's like, you know, if you need some work, they're gonna tell you flat out you need work, and if he's telling you, hey, you got something there, then you know what, you got something there, because he ain't gonna lie to you. Let's see. 1973, he moved to L.A., which he started working as an advertising agent out there to pay the bills, because he wasn't a big comic yet. So most of us, we got day jobs. We do the comedy at night and on the weekends until we hopefully hit it big and can pay the bills. But yeah, like I said, you know, nowadays you can do a podcast anywhere in the world. You know, in the olden days you had to drive to New York or L.A. if you really wanted to make it big time and not be a local comic. You want to be a big time comic, New York or L.A. You weren't making that happen. You could hit the road, but you always had to end up back in one of those 2 spots and hope you got noticed. Okay, nowadays with the internet, you can be noticed anywhere. You're not at the mercy of those venues anymore. While he was an advertising agent, he kept writing. He ended up selling a script to Sanford & Son. Boom, your foot's in the door. You're on Sanford & Son, one of the big comedy hits at the time. That led to him writing some shows also for the popular show Welcome Back, Kotter. Mr. Kotter. Imagine that. Elizabeth, I'm coming. Mr. Kotter. 2 of the biggest shows of the time. He's one of the writers. Hey, you're getting noticed. You got stuff back on that. I guess he was invited to writers' meetings for then Three's Company, which we all grew up watching Three's Company, one of the biggest sitcoms of the time. So he's in with the biggest sitcoms of the time at this point, okay? That shows how good of a writer he is, because he's writing stuff that's getting noticed where other people are not getting noticed. So 1977, he had a critical car accident in Beverly Hills, and he said that when he was in a car accident, he said, I guess he was out cold, he was ready to die, and he remembers distinctly, like a voice from the other side asking him, do you want to continue living as Garry Sanders? And without thinking, he said yes. And he said when he came back to, he remembers vividly that conversation that he had with someone while he was passed out, which led him to believe so much in the afterlife, and he said it inspired him to, it gave him purpose in life, and it inspired him to pursue comedy, and I guess later on that accident became part of his act, him talking about it. It was part of his comedy act. I guess he was at one of the Three's Company's writer meetings, and they were throwing around ideas. He threw around an idea, and one of the guys running the thing said, Chrissy wouldn't say that. Chrissy, the legendary character from Three's Company. And right when he said that, he just said to himself, you know what? I can't do this anymore. He just got up and walked out, And after that, he just performed for himself. He didn't write anymore wasn't a writer anymore. He was only a performer. Which I understand, because as a comic, and it's like, a lot of times you work shows, and I've had this happen, and they don't even tell you sometimes beforehand. You walk into the show, hey, I'm ready to perform, then all of a sudden, hey, you got to work clean tonight. It's like, well, that's something you couldn't tell me before I got here. It's like, why are you giving me rules? Why don't you tell me just go up and make them laugh, regardless of what I do? But it's like, and there's a lot of reasons for that. The headliner, they don't want you working dirty and getting more laughs than them, then there's no way they don't want you stealing the show from them. Or if they work clean, that means everybody's got to work clean, because that's not their thing. It can't be other people's thing. And, how do you get around that? It's to the point, I got to the point where I didn't even want to be invited to some of these shows, because I was sick of being told how to do my act. It's like, if you thought I was a good enough comic to book me, then let me go do my act. Don't let me show up and then give me restrictions, So I started working for myself, because if you work for yourself, you can do what you want, and, I don't have to be up there on stage thinking, oh, should I say this, shouldn't I say this? I'm working for myself. I can say whatever I want, and I think that's where Garry Shandling was in his life, that, he wanted to the point where he didn't have to answer to anybody but himself, and that's how you find out how good of a comic you can be, or how good of a person you can be in any field, when, the handcuffs are off and you have no restrictions. Just be you. That's going to bring out the best in you right there. Let's see, 1978, he began performing at the legendary Comedy Store. Every comedian's dream to perform there. I did get on stage there once. It was a dream come true. Chalking one off my bucket list right there. I was on vacation out there. I had a friend of a friend of a friend that got me on stage, and I guess Mitzi, who was, she was the one who ran the Comedy Store, and she's the one who gave all the comics the big breaks there, Rumor was that if you want a real primetime comedy spot, like the really good, when the biggest audience is there, you had to sleep with Mitzi if you were a comic, and that'd get you the good stage time. And if you didn't do that, you didn't get the good stage time. But she wouldn't use him. She didn't think Garry Shandling was funny at all, and might give him a late night spot. There was like 5 people left, and they were closing up the place or something. But then the comics, they actually they picketed the Comedy Store, because she wasn't paying the comics. She was saying it was a workshop. You went there to work out your material, to get better for other gigs, and they were saying, hey, bull crap, you got a full audience here every night because of us, we're doing the work, you need to pay us, you keep the drink money, we keep the ticket money, is usually how it works. And Garry Shandling, he decided to cross the picket line. He went in there and went by all his comic friends and said, no, I'm going to perform for Mitzi. She never forgot him for that, and that's when he started to get good stage time, was when he crossed the picket line and showed her, hey, Mitzi said, you're going to be there for me, I'm going to be there for you. Earned his way. Which I'm sure didn't make the other comics happy, because those are your brothers, those are your friends. You don't want to turn your back on your friends. But I remember, you ever see the movie La Bamba, where they were taking Richie Valens, and they said, we're going to give you a shot here, and he's like, well, I got to get my band, and he's like, we ain't got no room for your band. He's like, well, I ain't going on my band. And finally he said, you got to choose. You want a chance at the brass ring, and you want your friends, because you can't always have both. Well, you got to choose what's more important to you. What you want to do in life, or your friends. And he said his family was most important, because it's more important than family, but he did. He dropped the band, and he went in there and became the big star, as we all know, which, hey, Garry Shandling, as we know, legendary career. In 1981, after a couple of years on the road, like I said, you'd always end up back in New York or LA, but you play the other states. That's called a road comic, where you go state to state, and once they heard your act in Texas, then you move on to Arizona, then you move on to this one, that one, and that's how you get paid, that's how you make a living. You're not making big bucks, but it's better than working pumping gas somewhere. But while he was on the road, you never know. That's why I said, no matter where you're at, always do your best, because you never know who's going to be in the audience. A talent scout was at one of the shows, noticed him, kept an eye on him from being on the road, and eventually booked him to be a guest on the Tonight Show. Thought he was that funny. Went on the Tonight Show, did have a good set, had such a good set, he was asked to come back and sub for Carson up until 1987. He was like a guest host whenever Carson, if Carson couldn't do it, they had to list the guest hosts. I remember Jay Leno said that the guest hosts, they all wanted to up their money, and Jay said, I'll take the same, which led to him getting more work than the other ones wanted, more money. So as they got more popular, they wanted more money. Jay said, no, I'll stay the same, but got him on TV more. So took less money to get more exposure, paid off for him in the end. So 87, Jay Leno got the show, then obviously Jay was bringing in all his friends to guest host. It wasn't Carson's friends anymore, so Shandling wasn't asked to do it, I assume. So he turned his attention to cable TV, where that was the big thing at the time. You know, the HBOs, the Cinemax, the Showtimes, these were coming on. And same thing with Conan, you know, when he lost the Tonight Show, he went over to what? TBS, you know, cable TV. You know, it's not one of the main stations, but it's a venue. A lot of people are watching. There's the famous Funny Like Clown sneeze right there. So, you know, that's cable was the big thing. Now podcast is the big thing at the time. It's going where the thing at the time was. Cable TV was the thing at the time. He concentrated on that. Smart move. 84, he started his first special on Showtime. This is his comedy special on Showtime. Garry Shandling, Alone in Vegas. And apparently that was a hit. 2 years later in 86, on Showtime also, he put the Garry Shandling Show's 25th anniversary special, which was another comedy special that he did. Then finally in 1991, after he switched over to HBO, was his third special, the self-titled Garry Shandling Comedy Hour, which HBO was doing a lot of comedy hours at the time. They had, what, the half-hour comedy special with the up-and-coming comics, and then the hour comedy special. Those are the mainstream-made comics, so... Hey, same thing in the comedy world, you know. If you're an up-and-coming comic, you get a little bit of time. You're a veteran comic, you get to close the show. Same thing on the local circuit. Same thing's going on for everybody and everything. Let's see, 85 to 1990, the Garry Shandling Show did 72 episodes on Showtime, which a lot of work goes into 72 episodes. I did the Comedy Kitchen. I hit 50 episodes, and it was so much work behind the scenes. You don't realize just to make a half-hour show how much work goes in. And I still have a credit goes out to the people who helped me on that show. My mom, Adrienne Wirth, she was a big part of the show. Jeff Sylvia, the director. Karen Bartram, she was the original director and helped out on some later episodes in any manner she could. Dan Beliveau. A lot of people helped out on that show. Louis Vasquez, camera guys. Even his son came up, got a little bit of credits helping out on the show. You know, it was a big family thing. It was a team effort, and I still look back. It was some really good work that I put out. I'm so proud of the product we put out, and always got that one on my resume as some television experience. And 72 episodes, a lot of work on Showtime. One of the big venues of the time. Now, this ain't the 4, 5, or 7, the NBC, CBS, ABC. This is Showtime, so not everybody has cable, okay? So, you know, you're not as big of an audience as one of the major networks, but cable's got a big enough audience where I think it's something like 90-something% of you have cable. I mean, you know, Showtime's a pay channel, so just because you got cable don't mean you got the pay channels, but enough of the people, you know, the rich people that could afford the Showtimes and the HBOs, that's who's watching them. And I guess if you want people to spend money on you, you want the rich people. So that's not a bad audience to have where, you know, you're on 4, 5, or 7, you're hitting the blue-collar person, but the blue-collar guy almost got the money to buy your album or go buy a ticket and see you, okay? You got Showtime, you can afford that. You can afford to go see a Garry Shandling show. Then I guess the good money came in when edited reruns started to form on the Fox Television Network. I guess they bought the rights to the reruns. They edited them down and started, you know, get the dirty stuff out because you can work dirty on Showtime. Which, I mean, he never worked dirty anyway, but some stuff wasn't appropriate for, you know, TV the kids were watching, where Showtime was all adults. And I remember Star Trek, you know how big Star Trek is now? It's a phenomenon worldwide, but the original Star Trek wasn't that big. It was when it went into syndication, that's when it blew up and became the big cult following that Star Trek has, that blew it up in the big industry it was. It was all syndication, so you can get into syndication. Who knows? Maybe we can get the Comedy Kitchen. Well, I think they're still airing it over at LTV, the TV studio that did it, so I am getting some syndication. I'm still getting seen for work I did years ago, so you can't beat that deal. Let's see, 1992, The Larry Sanders Show. As I said, that was where he had his huge success. The second time around, that one went for 89 episodes on HBO. And he got to the one that was so big in 1993. NBC offered him $5 million a year to take over for the late night show, which was David Letterman's show when he moved over to CBS and the big late night wars controversy. He declined that offer. He said he was going to stick with Showtime, which, if you're experiencing that kind of success, I mean, yeah, you're probably going to hit a bigger audience, but, I mean, if you got a good thing going, why take the risk, you know what I'm saying? I remember Dallas with Larry Hagman. That was one of the biggest shows at the time, and Patrick Duffy, he was like the second guy on Dallas, and he always thought he could do better, so he chose to leave Dallas. He was going on to big things. He did nothing. Larry Hagman kind of laughed at him. He's like, yeah, you don't realize how hard it is to get a good thing going, did you? We got a good thing in Dallas. Should have never left. And eventually brought him back. It was all a dream, type stuff like that. But Garry had a good thing going on Showtime. And, yeah, he probably would have done good things on the Late Show that taken over for David Letterman. But why mess with a good thing if you already got it to go for something that's unknown, So he stuck around. 2002 TV guy named Larry Sanders Show the 38th greatest show of all time. That's TV Guide. They've been around since I was a kid, and probably my parents were a kid. I don't know. I remember having TV Guide around when I was a kid. My parents had it. And, I mean, you're talking of all time. You're talking the Dick Van Dyke Show, I Love Lucy. I mean, that's 38th show of all time, and that's really saying something right there. Entertainment Weekly had the show the 25th best show in the last 25 years, which I thought was a little more realistic, because to say of all time, remember what somebody was saying, they had an argument with their wife, and she's like, I think you're the most selfish human being in the entire world. He's like, well, that's just ridiculous. Have you met every person in the entire world? So, I mean, to say it's the greatest show of all time, nobody's watched every show of all time, so how could you possibly say that? I mean, it's a nice thing to say, but you really couldn't back it up factually. So, and Time Magazine put them in the top 100 of greatest of all time. So you got Entertainment Weekly, you got Time Magazine, you got TV Guide. They're all paying tribute to this guy, okay? So regardless of where you put them on your schedule, those are some pretty big names giving you credit. Those are the names you want to be in when you're making it big in this business. He did do some cameo works. He was in The Night We Never Met, A Love Affair, and Dr. Dolittle, one of Dr. Dolittle movies. Had some cameo roles on this. He starred in What Planet Are You From? And Town and Country with Warren Beatty, which, if you're working with Warren Beatty, that's not some bad company to be in, which, and I can't say I've ever seen either one of those movies, so, I mean, I don't think they were huge hits. I mean, I'm sure they were moderately good hits for the time, but not the Dr. Dolittles or whatever, the Eddie Murphy movies that he was in, but, some stuff on TV that he did, The X-Files, The Dictator, Saturday Night Live, what comic don't want to be on there? Back in 1979, the original Make Me Laugh. You remember that one where somebody'd have to sit in a chair, and if you could make them laugh, you'd had to see teeth. If they opened their mouth and showed teeth, that means they lost. And if they could keep it from laughing so hard that you saw teeth and they won, that was the game show. So I guess he was one of the comedians trying to make somebody laugh. I don't know if he pulled it off or not, if he got teeth or didn't get teeth, but that was the gist of the game of how you won money. They should bring that show back. That'd be a great one for comedy. Make me laugh. Somebody's got the rights to it. They're bringing back every other show. Candid Camera, that came out 100 different for everybody. Had a hidden camera show. That's the thing. Why not bring back the Gong Show? They even brought back for a little bit on Comedy Central. It wasn't long. I think it was a couple of months, but hey, you never know what's going to hit it. I think Make Me Laugh, I think that would be a great one to come back with. You heard it here first on Funny Like Clown Podcast. Bring back that show. If it comes out after this, it was my idea. You remember that, okay? I want some frickin' credit. I guess, what else? He was on Real Time with Bill Maher. So some great TV credits. And, as I said, everything moved over to the internet. And the Joe Rogan Podcast, that's one of the biggest ones. Well, what's one of the other biggest ones? In 2016, he was on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld. And, Jerry, he's the clean comic of the time, and he brings on all the clean guests. He's had some dirty guests, but he sticks to the upper clientele. Like I said, the Showtimes, the rich people, the white-collar people. That's Jerry Seinfeld, Garry Shandling, that's their audience, okay? So, you never seen Bill Burr on Getting Coffee, did you? Because I guess Bill Burr would tell Jerry just how it is. You never saw Andrew Dice Clay on in Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. You see, so I guess he don't like the dirty acts. I don't know what to tell you. Joe Rogan does. He'll put anybody on. That's why he's at the top of the list. Because I remember, who was it? None of the late night talk shows. David Letterman or Jay Leno, neither one would let Andrew Dice Clay on. And I guess years later, after Andrew Dice Clay died down, Jay Leno's like, all right, I'll have you on. And he's like, screw you. You should have had me on when I was the biggest comic on the planet, Then Jimmy Fallon, hats off to him. He had Andrew Dice Clay on to give him his Tonight Show credit. He did have recently on the last few years, which Jimmy Fallon, you got to give credit to him because he broke a lot of rules to the Tonight Show, letting him know, hey, this is my show. I remember Johnny Carson had a blowout with Joan Rivers, would never have her on the show again because he gave her a break, and then she competed against him in another late night talk show, I think on Fox, and competed against him. He thought that was a stab in the back. Then when Jay Leno took it over, he said, "I'm not going to have Joan Rivers on the show, because it was Johnny's show, out of respect to him." And Jimmy Fallon on this first episode of the Tonight Show was like, "You owe me $100. You know who you are. I mentioned any names. You said I wouldn't get the show. I got the show. You owe me $100." Joan Rivers comes out, boom, slaps $100 on the table. He had her back on the show. He broke the rules. So that's the stuff you get remembered for. It was a genius move. How long did you have to make the woman suffer? She was offered a job and she took it. That's why, I've had that happen. I've had comedians steal rooms from me. That's one of the big rules in comedy. You don't mess with another person's room, but if you do it, you're a real piece of garbage. And I've had a few people steal rooms from me. And while I wouldn't talk to them again, it's like the comics who went over there and performed in the rooms. And I was kind of like, all the work I gave you in that room, then this person stole it from me. Now you're going to go work for them. And I had to catch myself. I'm like, you know what? They're a comic, work. I can't hold it against them. You take whatever work you can get. You hold it against the person who stabbed you in the back and took the room. So that's who you hold it against, nobody else. March 24th, 2016, at the ripe old age of 66, Garry Shandling passed away in Santa Monica, California. 66. Nowadays, that's pretty young, but when I was a kid, hey, people lived till their 60s, so back then if you lived till 60, that was a ripe old age. So anything over 60 was bonus. He got 6 bonus years, 66. Left an estate of $668,000 to his lawyer and best friend, because I guess he had no spouse or family, and they said he didn't talk often about his private life. He was, his private life's private, comedy was comedy, but he didn't mix the two. There was a girl, I guess, that one of the producers of a show, or was on a show or something, I don't know what part she had, that he did live with for a while. They didn't get married, he didn't talk about it, but they ended up breaking up, and when they broke up, he fired her from the show, and she ended up suing him. They settled out of court for like $1 million or whatever, but didn't get married, didn't have any family to speak of, so took care of his best friend, and this is when you know you're a great person, when you give back. He left a private trust fund of his money of $15.2 million to the UCLA Medical Center for medical research. So, hey, if you're going to give back from comedy, you got nobody else to take care of, do some research, help out other people in the world, and that's how you give back in comedy. I've done benefit shows for free just to help people out, to try and raise some money, because that's what it's all about. Give back, man, help out. Don't be the greedy guy where it's all about you. It's a me world we live in, and it shouldn't be. It should be about the other person. Because what did God say? Love thy neighbor as they would thyself. Everybody's your brother and sisters. So, hey, go out tomorrow, tell somebody a joke. Show them some love. Because if you tell somebody a joke, that puts laughter. That puts something positive in their life. Then they're going to do something positive. Laughter is the best medicine. This is Funny Like Clown Podcast. I'm your host. Go check out Jerry Shandling on YouTube. Check him out here on Funny Like Clown Podcast and keep laughter alive. Till next time, good night.